Yeah, I'm just making a conscious decision with this podcast to try speak a bit slower because I've noticed when I was trying to make a short of us talking, we talk over each other almost every every moment. So I think I think it's because we're vibing in all honesty, but like when you're editing it, it's like, oh no, he got cut off. He didn't make his point clearly, and so on and so forth. So I'm just like, I got to speak clearer and not cut Vincent off so I can get that sweet,
Soundbite.
yeah,
We complete each other's.
sentences.
Oh wow, it took a while. Okay.
Maybe it's
Um,
not worth the effort, to be honest. Maybe just keep on doing what we're doing. I mean, like we're having fun, really, I suppose. Okay, let me let me share the screen so I can demonstrate what I mean. Okay, first little question for you is I know you're a proponent of Spec-Kit because you're behind it, but like, is there a quicker way to share your prompt with your team other than using something like Claude Code transcripts? Is there some other like lightweight way of doing it? Do you just throw some history into a gist or something? Because I'm now between Claude and Codex, and this tool doesn't seem to work for Codex, so great.
oh, yeah. I was just about to sense or share something about
And
it's like SDD align. No, 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 no. There was this other project, Agent Diff session capture. Oh, that's an interesting one. But I don't know if it supports others than Cloud.
okay,
It's a
and then
CLI tool that hooks into Cloud.
and
Mm.
then this Copilot. Yeah, I just feel I don't know if it's even worth doing this on and sometimes because sometimes like when people share things to me, the session is just too it's
Yeah,
just
so I
too
think we
awkward
need to
to
identify, and here we're talking over each other, and I interrupted you. But
hmm,
I think what we need to do is we need to identify why do we want to share sessions? What is it that we want to get out of it, right?
yeah.
And we could share the full session log with all the mishaps, or we could find some type of flow that allows us to capture important key decisions and information that we want to share to
Mm.
accompany the code changes that we are proposing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like these important decisions need to be captured and marked up as much and I don't know of any tool that does it. Like yeah, like these sessions are hard to follow. And if you could sort of like highlight like I don't know the the bit where something happened, which plays into a certain uh, AI usage pattern that you want to get across to your team or something, then that would be great. But I just maybe I need to build the damn tool that I want.
Sounds like it because what you're saying is a very different use case from what I think about session sharing. To me, it sounds like you are, and I think this is something that I also do. You are trying to show to your team members if you're faced with this type of issue, or hey, did you know that you can prompt the model to think deeper in this way or to
Mm.
identify other edge cases in that way? Is that what you're trying to do, right? You're
Well,
trying
it's
to
not.
share.
Yeah, I'm trying to share. Like, it's not just about me. It's like I would like to see what other people think. Okay, this leads me nicely onto what I really want to get at, actually. I came across a brilliant um like web page where they essentially try to plot all the things that we've talked about from time to time about about obstacles as they call it, challenges to using AI, anti-patterns, things that you shouldn't maybe do, patterns which might help. And this is the best collection I've seen. And for the purpose of this podcast today, I thought it would be cool if we just quickly go through them, if we agree on these things or not, or maybe what they missed or something like that. I know there's a
I
lot
would be
there that,
curious to hear from you which one of like you're showing a diagram and I
yeah.
don't know where to start. And Did you read
Yeah.
it? And is there anything that stands out that you say this
Well,
really
there's a
aligns?
few I dipped in here and there and everywhere because as I mentioned in the last podcast, I am essentially taking uh, some platform documentation and we're working on how to make it AI friendly. And so I'm keen to meet all the patterns uh, around making the knowledge accessible to AI. So like when I dipped into this knowledge composition here, it was like saying, you know, don't when you keep everything in a big file, it might not work out or something like that. So it's recommending, oh my gosh, what is that? It's called what is that skill? It's in the Claude documentation, like gradual.
Yeah.
Uh, oh God, what's the name?
Progressive discovery or something similar?
Progressive disclosure. Yeah.
Disclosure. Yeah.
So essentially, they're saying progressive disclosure here. So instead of having like one huge best practices, which is actually the case with my current client, like we just have huge onboarding guides, and of course they recommended breaking it down with architecture, tech stack, deployment, API docs,
And so this is
sensible
something
stuff.
that I've noticed as well in the skills that so basically, as you alluded earlier, Spec Ledger is a framework around spec-driven development for team collaboration, for sharing information. And we also have implemented the idea of capturing the messages from the user that and the model that led, or the agentic shell that led to a commit. So we're using a hook whenever a git commit happens to basically capture the delta of messages. Then we tag those messages by the commit
Mm,
ID. So
wow.
every commit ID should have, and then you should be able to identify messages related to a specification and a specific
So
commit.
you're trying to roll up the prompt that went into the commit, basically.
Yeah, but it's too detailed, right? So then
Mm.
we have a separate GitHub issue that was referring to an MCP to basically convert session data into knowledge, into a knowledge base. And when I looked at it, it was like it was a bit silly because we're not storing sessions as blobs, inside a database, inside an object storage. We're actually already analyzing messages by commit. So it did highlight a couple of features that we could add onto Spec Ledger, which is the ability to prune and merge and actually derive knowledge base articles,
Mm.
global knowledge base articles to out of session data, and that's one of the GitHub issues and areas of work that we want to explore. So
Yeah.
we haven't implemented that yet. But then when it comes down to what you just highlighted, the problem where we have Spec Ledger CLI and we have a bunch of commands. So the spec kit, it's built out of bash scripts and Python, CLI, and some other stuff. And then the agent is instructed to run a bash script, and then the bash script needs to be a PowerShell for Windows. So it's very messy, right? So with
Mm.
Spec Ledger, we have one CLI. We've got rid of beats. Everything is rolled into one CLI, and then we have a bunch of skills for that CLI. Like
Ah.
this is how you create tasks. This is how you review comments. This is how you put
Okay, so you
pull
streamline it.
comments.
Yeah.
Yes, so we wrote a bunch of skills, and when you init your repo, we write down those skills, embedded into the Golang binary, down to your disk, so that they can be progressively discovered or disclosed
Mm.
by the agent cell to the model. And I actually noticed that those skills are too big, like exactly what you highlighted. So today I
Mm.
just created an issue, which is like I use the Anthropic skill creator, and they have now the whole evaluation framework in there as well. And I basically pulled it into the repository, and I did a full analysis of all of our skills, and basically what do we need to do to make these skills more aligned with the way that the agent shell or cloud code will progressively disclose this information to the agent.
How did you notice that? This is where I feel we get into, touchy-feely spider sense territory. How did you know that your skills were too big? Just because they didn't seem to be working, or?
Actually, so we did a huge streamlining effort of like getting rid of the bash shell scripts and converting into subcommands into the Golang binary. So you have only one binary need.
Hmm.
And in that effort, we also realigned all the skills. We defined a 4-layer framework of each layer's responsibility of like this belongs to shell hooks. This responsibility belongs to skills. This responsibility belongs to the CLI output. Also token efficient output. All this is defined in like one feature spec, and we actually created a bunch of rules around that. And then we realigned it. So only today I finally had time to actually download the binary with all the latest streamlining, and it actually works really well. Like I picked up a task and I was like, let's implement it with the latest CLI, and it was working well. So I didn't have an issue with the skills at the moment, but I noticed that maybe there can be an improvement. So it wasn't really driven by like data. It was
Okay.
just that
No, I
that
think
I
I think vibes and spider senses is something. Just that it's a bit weird.
it actually
Uh,
worked really well. But the thing is, I also wrote a Jira skill, right? A Jira CLI, and
mm.
I noticed that it was really messy and it didn't really work well. And I did the same thing there. So it's more
Was
like I
was your
had to
Jira
do that.
CLI like actual code or was it like a skill?
No, Markdown. Well. So basically, I forked the Golang CLI. That's the most popular one apparently. It has a lot of open PRs. So I forked it and merged some of those open PRs, and to make it act more like the GitHub CLI, because the GitHub CLI works really well with Cloud Code.
Mm.
And for example, you have an escape hatch. You can put API and then it can do REST API calls.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you the last time, but what I noticed was I was using the Jira CLI, and according to the Atlassian docs, when you want to move, in my case, I had to move a card from the backlog to a board. So if you go to backlog, you can right click and you say move to board, right? Uh, maybe this is going into an anecdote, right? But basically I was like showing um Claude, I said like, hey, I need to move this ticket to the board. When I create ticket, it goes into the backlog, and when then I want to assign it to the board, and 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 then Claude was like, yeah, according to the Atlassian docs, it should be this endpoint, and it does this endpoint, and then it will move the card to the board, and it wrote this down in the skill, and then I was like, okay, great. But I already moved it, so let's do it later. And then it created another ticket, and then I was like, okay, move it to the board, and it failed. It got a 204 response,
Yeah,
empty response.
I was gonna say as much. I was gonna say that I feel like it's a trap when you think that the skill is going to be your CLI. It's never going to end well because
No,
it's
but
non-deterministic, right?
yeah, absolutely. But
Ooh.
the thing was, when I asked Claude to move the ticket, it didn't work. And really cool, what happened was that I asked Claude, can you see my Chrome? And it launched Chrome MCP, like DevTools controlled, and it told me that it enabled a hook. It enabled a spy in the Chrome session managed by Claude, and
Oh
it
my
asked
God.
me to move the ticket.
Oh my
And I said,
God.
okay. I click on the button, and then I said I've done it, and it says now let me look at the log from the hook, and it says I can see that it's using Greenlight API and not. I'm just making up the name, or something Greenhouse or Greenlight
Yeah.
API, and it's not using the REST API when it's moved the ticket. And so it updated the skill saying don't use the documented REST API. The actual Confluence Jira API, like the web application, is using this API, and now it works. It's
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
Well, I mean that sounds like a rabbit hole to me. The the on the topic of
What do
Atlassian,
you mean rabbit hole?
I mean like because you're in like skill land as opposed to something deterministic with the CLI.
No,
So
no, 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 absolutely not. You missed the point. The
what's the
point was that the Atlassian REST API told you to do a certain API post request,
yeah.
and that it would move the cart, but that
But
it
it,
didn't work. That the web app works, and that Cloud
oh,
was able to hook into the Chrome session,
yeah,
enable a spy when I click the button, identify the actual endpoint, and then I don't care that it goes into the skill, right? The point is,
yeah.
it's insane. Like, at that point, I could go like, okay, my Golang CLI deterministically should
But
always call that
but to
API.
complete this flywheel to get back to determinism, you should have spun up an agent, reported the bug, splabbed on the issue to say that this
Report to
post didn't
who?
work as intended to move the card from this column to this column, and this
Report to
code,
who?
the people, the upstream of this Jira CLI that you're
No,
using.
it's
You didn't.
Atlassian.
So there's no. Oh, I thought you were using some Go code around
I am
the
using a Go
code.
code, but the Go code doesn't have the command to move the cart.
But
So I
this
use
this
the
is
pull
where you would
request.
contribute back, Vincent.
Yes, there is already a pull request that wasn't merged almost a year ago, which exposes a backdoor to actually do an API. So you have the Jira CLI. You can do Jira new ticket, and it will create a new ticket and all that. Those are all there. But there's a couple of things missing. And in that case, the GitHub CLI, you can do GitHub space API, and then you put the API path, and then you can actually use your GitHub CLI authentication to call the API endpoint, right?
Oh,
It's
I
like
didn't even know
curl.
about that. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it's like a escape hatch. So if the CLI doesn't have
Ah,
the content, so that already existed. There's already a pull request to contribute the API subcomment so that you can directly hit
oh, I
endpoints.
see. Okay. Well, this is pretty
So
nuanced then. So you
yeah,
you were
but then
using that to keep the creds and
yeah, so
make the
my skill
call.
says until we have a subcommand to move tickets, you can use the escape hatch, which is through the API. And originally, according to Atlassian docs, you should use this endpoint, but that didn't work. So we
Hmm.
removed that. And in the skill, it says use this green
Yeah.
light or whatever it is.
This yeah. This escape
Hatch.
is quite an interesting concept,
CLI
but
design, yes. You don't need an
I still
MCP.
think it's yeah. Like after working with Atlassian products, yeah. This thing that I'm sharing with you right now, I'm like. Uh, so there's
Is
two
this
ways.
to is this for Confluence?
Yeah, there's two ways to obviously work with Confluence. You can work with the curl API. You can work with okay. There's three. There's a bunch of ways. There's the MCP way, which is basically doing curl commands, and then there's this way using a tool called Mark, which has got the highest rated. I should star it. The highest rated tool to push to Confluence. And the thing that I wanted to say is that with Atlassian products, they're actually amazingly complicated to work with. The whole act of Markdown to HTML, all these crazy macro templates they have for like everything from like little notes to I don't know, table layouts to database to Jira ticket layouts. There's a lot going on actually. So this tool is actually really good, and it does have its problems, and there's some open pull requests. But like, if you're working with Confluence from AI, you should be using a tool like this. Otherwise, I feel you'll be catching some edge cases sooner or later, and you'll be scratching your head. And this is the deterministic tool to get you somewhat there. Okay, that said, let's just spend like lightning 1 minute on each thing just to say whether it's whether we think it's correct or or it sucks. How about that, Vincent?
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know where to start. Okay, I'll start at the top left. Do you think? Yeah, I think context rot is still a thing, even though I noticed that Codex is definitely better at it.
Uh, I think context rock is still a massive problem.
Yeah, and it should be a
I don't
bigger.
know about Codex, but even with Opus 1 million context window, it's very difficult to. I noticed that LLM agents do not keep track of details very well. I don't know if this is a regression or we're just used to them doing a lot more than before, and now we just expect the world. So
Yeah,
most people are feeling it's regression, but I don't think it's regression. I think it's just we getting used to
Yeah, the
more and more.
expectations are always growing. So context management, um, treat context as a scarce, degrading. Okay, I think this is like, do you have an approach to context management? Like, to be honest, you know, I do click compact conversation regrettably from time to time when I have a bit of downtime.
So for me, since I'm now using the my plan with Opus 1 million token access, I honestly I have the status bar tell me how much percent is used. I also like that after the plan, it always tells me how much percent was used by the plan, and it offers me to clear and then do the implementation. But I noticed with Opus 1M, the usage is usually like 3% or 17% or very low. So I'm like, I'm not even clearing it anymore. I'm like, oh, it looks good. But maybe that's also why sometimes details get lost. Um, like even though it's a 1 million token context window Opus LLM model, um, and it tells me that it's only using 10 or 15% of token window, details are not being tracked. So sometimes I do go to like the basic Opus, and then I do aggressively clear.
Hmm. I
I
mean,
do not compact.
it's quite a lot of work, isn't it, to reset it in some ways. So we
I
get
mean, I
lazy,
have
don't
my
we?
checkpoint. So in Spec-Ledger, we added the idea of checkpoints, and what they
Mm,
do is they basically that's a bit related to the question earlier about like how do we share sessions and what do we want to get out of sharing sessions. We actually started to move more towards either building knowledge base out of sessions or with the checkpoint command, we ask the model specifically give us a detailed like progress update of the work that we've completed in
mm.
this related back to the actual thing.
Yeah, summary.
Yeah,
Because the
related specifically to like the work items that we're supposed to work
yeah
on because there's so many other things but happening in between. When I encounter a bug and I say go and
yeah
create a bug, I don't want really that to be
actually
collected or whatever.
that summary is pretty much what I like to do. And what actually confuses me is that the compact conversation, like I don't even know what it's doing, which makes me uncomfortable. Like, is it summarizing? Where is the summary? I don't know. Maybe that's me just not knowing how compact works. Okay, let's just move on. Knowledge document. Keep AI. I think we talked about this. It's just saying the same thing again and again about keeping things. Ground rules. This is like to say what your. I, I I think we talked about agents. I mean, it's been a topic around, on on a couple of channels about how agents.md or claude.md might be polluting everything. I still have a claude.md where I have some basic setup, but I don't do like prefer simple solutions or I don't know if you do this sort of thing like
For me, I really don't use the Cloud MD because Spec Kit has this constitution and it gets invoked as a post after certain steps or phases, the constitution check gets invoked, and then we do a full analysis
so
or
constitution would be
detailed.
the ground rules, I suppose,
Yeah, I
in
mean, I
your
understand that
parlance.
Cloud.md is more like a little additional customization on top of the system prompt to make sure that your agent works in a consistent manner. And I'm not sure that we use it effectively because what we do is when we use SpecKit, we it's a bit like mini waterfall, right? We ahead of time plan out the work
Mm,
across the different areas and then also the definition of done and acceptance criteria and basically what we need for validation. So that gets reinforced in the agent loop, right? You pick up the next piece of work, you're going to work on this. These are the files that you should be looking at. Maybe the model goes in a little bit of an explore to like confirm its understanding and to make sure that the file system still matches with the task definition. And then when it thinks it's done, it needs to go through a type of an iteration of like, is this really, validated? Like, did I do it correctly? Are my acceptance criteria met?
yeah,
Are my
I
tests
mean,
passing?
I understand
And those are
your
the stuff that's the
Spec
ground
Ledger
rules, right?
has a lot of has a lot of stuff like that. But like I mean, when you're vibing in a Claude session, you don't have like any project rules that apply across all your different chat sessions. No.
We just introduced a new rule amongst ourselves, which is if we like what happens, what I frequently do is I see a problem and I just tell Cloud, hey, go and create a GitHub issue. And it very beautifully captures the problem. Maybe there's a
Mm.
bit of an exploration to find out what could be the reason for that error. And then, it usually does a sub agent and then creates the GitHub
Do you have
issue.
a command, or you just tell it? You just chat to it. Say,
No, I barely do. I don't say anything anymore recently. I think it's gotten that good that I just say,
so
hey,
you're not using beads anymore. You just tell it to make a GitHub issue. Well, I
no, no,
guess that's
no, we
one
use
way. I guess
beats.
it uses beads.
No, we use beats for our spec-driven development, but if we encounter a bug, I ask it to
Um,
go and create a GitHub issue.
oh,
Because
okay. Because then the team gets wider knowledge or wider alignment to the issue, I
it's more
suppose.
like beats has become feature-specific task tree. It's like a to-do list, but it belongs to a specific feature.
Mm,
So, originally Beast is like at the root of the repo and it's shared, but then you get a lot of merge conflicts when you have different feature
mm,
branches.
yeah.
So we had a lot of issues with that. So when we rolled Beast into our CLI, we made it create feature specific task lists. And
Mm,
and they're basically little task trees that belong. That's part of our mini waterfall, right? We have a feature that we need to work on. We create a plan, research the technologies, do some spikes on certain approaches, and then generate a task tree, dependencies, phases, and
yeah.
MVP path, basically what you
Yeah.
get with
And
Kiro
but
as well.
and the GitHub issues is for team alignment, right?
And the GitHub issue is like, shit, there's something else came up and I can't really
yeah.
work on that right
That
now.
makes a lot of
It's
sense
more like a
actually.
global, like a bug report or something like that.
And that leads us to this thing called extract knowledge. I don't even know what it's going to say.
Not yet, because I wanted to link this to the GitHub issue where I wanted to link this to what you just say about vibe coding. So the new rule that we introduced is that we don't do spec-driven development for this type of bugs unless, all right, it's a funny rule because I introduced it and then 2 minutes later I changed it. So the rule is when you have an issue like that, I noticed some of our team members, they started this huge spec-driven development on like one line fix. And it generates the whole spec, user stories, edge cases. And I was like, ultimately the code change was literally like one line. I'll give you a concrete example. It was the Go release populating the version field. There was a bug. It was populating the wrong constant. And so when the CLI ran, it didn't show the version correctly.
Hmm.
So it was a bug report like, hey, when we run SL version, it doesn't show us the right version. And he
Yeah.
created like a massive user data, a user story around it. And I was
Yeah.
like, guys, for this type of stuff, can we just vibe it? And then I did room change was I had another issue and I was like, I'm gonna vibe it. I just picked up the GitHub issue and I literally said nothing to Cloud. I just started Cloud. I said, I want to work on hashtag 72. And Cloud went, let me run GitHub issue view 72. There it is. So you use the CLI. I didn't tell it to do that. It just automatically went, I'm in a repository. It's on GitHub. I'm going to use the GitHub
Mm.
CLI to view the issue. I didn't say any of that. It just pulled out the issue description from that particular session that created it. And then I switched it to plan mode, obviously, because it was a vibe and I wanted to, I wanted it to explore and identify and then tell me what it's what's going to do before we actually start doing things. So it's not the full like user alignment with spec-driven development. It's very, very short little plan to do this. And then it pulled in a whole bunch of additional stuff. It's like, okay, in this case, there could be use a scenario where this and that happened. What do we do? And I was like, oh my God, this is getting too big. This is not a one line change. Let's do a spec-driven development. So then I told Cloud, okay, that's a nice plan, but I think we need team alignment on that. So then I told it to feed that information into spec
Mm.
ledger specify, and then it created user stories and edge cases because it blew up. My bug was Git attributes. Whenever you do a pull request, some of the files are purely generated, and you want to linguistically ignore those so that the PR doesn't like expand them. So I wanted those auto-generated files to be auto-collapsed, and then the reason it blew up was that some repositories, when you initialize it, already have Git attributes. So how do you merge things together? So that's where it was like created a whole bunch of additional
Yeah.
user stories
So
Um,
I'm summarizing this in my head that like you have different types of tasks that you do at work. Your bug fixes, your business as usual type stuff where you don't need so much team alignment. And then
yeah,
there's the things that kind of blow up or whatever, the features
yeah.
where you need team alignment.
I
Yeah,
think
that
that's the
makes
criteria.
yeah,
I
that
think the key word is team alignment. The moment
yeah.
it's more than a one line change or it requires like a user stories
Mm.
and I mean, the
Like
moment that it's more than a one line change and you want other people's views, you should push it
yeah.
as a spec.
I'm just equating this to the sort of sensible defaults at work. Like we have these processes called um, kickoffs for for uh, for team alignment before you start the work, and desk checks for team alignment as you complete the work. And I feel like these engineering practices that we've been doing for years can be sort of mapped to working with agents. So so
I
something I need
think
to write about.
I think what we've learned is that all of these practices that we used to do for years, where we have a lot of overhead in communication between people, finding time to discuss or getting a
Hmm.
review, have been collapsed significantly with agents, accelerated. A lot of them become um, literally less of an issue because you can get the turnaround much faster.
Hmm.
But you still need like those good practices
Yeah,
of finding team
I
alignment
mean,
and
I'm just thinking about it, and I might as well mention it, is that traditionally, the best desk checks, the best kickoffs, they've always been in person, and it's always been like a synchronous thing with your team. And I noticed that since I'm becoming more remote, that this relationship is kind of degrading because you know these people on the call that don't even say anything sometimes, which is never a good sign. Um, but now we have agents which can't talk, you know, they can't sit around a table or a whiteboard. So now we have to adapt our workflow so that we can bring in the voice of the agent or whatever that you want to call it, the input from the agent, as well as the input from team members. And this is where I think things fall down because like, yeah, it's easy to have a whiteboarding session and talk about things, but then how do you make sure the team is aware of that sort of that plan from the agent? You know what I mean? Like people don't necessarily read all that stuff before the meeting sort of thing.
yeah.
So this is where things get tricky. This human team team alignment. Yeah, it's damn. I haven't seen it working perfectly, that's for sure.
And I've also noticed that so one of the major things that I really want to focus on in the next few days or over the weekends with SpecLedger is to find the deterministic validations because I feel without it, even if you do spec-driven development, even if you do user stories and you have team alignment on the user stories, there is still a big quality problem with the output if you do not have more deterministic validation around the
Mm.
the output basically. Like I think this relates back to original discussion where and Adams Jacob was saying like you have two teams. One team is still very much hands-on with the code, and another team is very much
Yeah,
focused on just accepting the code. But that second team must have very strong testing practices
yeah,
and
yeah. It's
validation
going back to
mechanisms.
what we were discussing in the previous pod. Like there needs to be like a this role almost, or I mean, we're talking about roles just generally, but like, yeah, I think I would definitely agree that like these engineering practices of having a separate QA team is actually probably more important than ever. You need that sort of like that quality control. Yeah. Okay,
Well, I think you need at least to have the expertise to make sure that the quality control is part of the feedback loop.
yeah.
Because I don't
And
think you need a separate team. I think you need people with the expertise
yeah, the people with
to,
expertise, that's a good point because I'm just harking back to the usual QA experiences that I have. Usually they're not very technical people,
yes,
you know, doing very mundane things, and things have changed now because now with AI, you can the name of the game is to make processes deterministic using AI. So so things are different now because that quality control team should be able to do the oh you sent me a screen grab. I don't know where it was from, but essentially I thought it was saying what I'm trying to say very well. The division is simple: deterministic computation and probabilistic reasoning. They're complementary. The part between them is where the work happens.
Yeah.
Getting yeah. What is the point I'm trying to make here? That the quality control stuff needs to somehow prove that the stuff is correct in a deterministic way or something like that.
It's the same thing. Like I shared a post on from Reddit and it was removed, maybe because it was AI generated. But the
Oh
core
God.
point of the post was that he's part of a team and they have front end issues, 40 layers of React hook linked together. I don't even know. Like, so basically they lost control over the quality of the product. And he's saying that on the back end, it's kind of okay. The performance of the AI generated code is all right, but they're like he's really concerned about like long-term maintenance. And then the top
Mm.
comment upvoted was, it's not against the law to use AI first to write tests. And it was funny because it was just something we discussed, right? Which is like,
Mm.
we think that the first thing you should do if you have an existing code base is to booster your test harnesses with
Yeah,
AI before you unleash it on your code.
yeah.
So
And
then,
test
yeah,
harnesses, the thing that I find about test harnesses is that I think the more experienced you are, the more you realize that you can test here, you can test this way, you can do a regression test here, you can do a unit test here, you can do the Swiss cheese model, and those people who are experienced can do this, can have some intuition to do that very well. But other times, like if you pass the quality, if you pass the QA to someone who doesn't have the experience, it's not going to be a great experience. It's not going to be a great results.
that's the biggest issue with AI coding, is that you really need a strong engineering, like an experienced engineer, to see patterns that the AI is going down and highlight them. For example, I was asking to do a bug report. When I ran a command, it didn't update the data the way I expected. It actually gave me an error. And I was like, I created a bug report. It shouldn't give an error because the file system is okay. And it identified that the command is running using current working directory, and it didn't identify the git root to find the relative path to the actual location of the file where it's expected to be, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So it's identified the problem. It's using current work directory. It also noticed that there is a feature to identify the git root. So to find, you can ask git what is the root of the repo,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like I thought it
Yeah,
was
and
a
so
command
relatively
like
go
git
back to
root or
the root.
something. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's something git reverse parse tree, and then I don't know, like to get the git root, it's a weird command.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but the AI went and said like, okay, there's actually a command. It's in this sub command. There's this git root utility, and I'm like, stop right there, because you're just going to start using this functionality, this utility from this other, like you don't have a dependency on this other component, and you're going to use an internal utility. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, if you let AI do, it will just go ahead. Oh, it already exists. There's a function there, and it creates a dependency between two components that shouldn't have a dependency. And in reality, it should move that utility function into a utility library, create a
Hmm.
shared dependency on the utility library.
Yeah.
Unless, in Golang, it's very common to just duplicate the code to avoid creating dependencies between components or
Hmm.
creating shared dependencies. But those type of questions, if you don't even ask those questions to begin with, right, is already the problem. You already have to have experience. Like,
Yeah.
okay, but
It's so nuanced. Like I'm
code
just
reuse
thinking.
and shared dependencies are painful too. So, like,
Mm,
where do I go? Which way do I go?
I'm just thinking at work we have like code sense, code scene, SonarQube running on every goddamn PR, and the little hints it gives you, like, oh, the complexity is moving from scale 7 to scale 8 or whatever. They're so bad, and or maybe I'm just flippant about it. Like a lot of the deterministic ways of measuring code quality, just judging by my anecdotal experiences with these code scene whatever tools. I'm probably just throwing shade, but I just don't feel that they're very useful. And if I don't feel that they're useful, then I don't feel that they're going to be useful for AI either. Like these. I don't know if you've ever played with these tools.
No,
It's so
absolutely. Like
nuanced to do what this quality really.
when you start out as an engineer, you may try to go for 100% unit test coverage, right?
Yeah,
And I see by your face that you already say
yeah,
that's not a good metric.
and those tools installed by enterprises are like pretty much suggesting that, oh, your coverage is low. No, 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 no. And
But now most organizations go like coverage should be between 70 and 80%, not less, and so on, right? I mean, the
yeah,
thing is,
it goes
it
back to
takes
like
experience to
everything's
realize
so
what is acceptable.
nuanced about what we do. There's
Yeah,
no
it takes
there's
experience.
there's no like clean cut way, which makes it really painful to talk about anything.
But that
'Cause-
means it ties perfectly back to the original statement, which is you need expert experience to guide AI still. Like we need an
yeah,
experienced QAT person that understands the test harnesses to be able to make good decisions about which responsibility, how it should be
yeah.
tested, up to what level.
some taste. Yeah, I just I'm just almost frustrated that that's the case almost, but I guess it's keeps us in the loop somehow. It's
Well,
just annoying. Like,
for how long, right?
yeah, it's just a big cringe, really. Like these things happen, and you just go, oh
For how long? Because we just talked about agent personas and about, skills, and then people are trying to capture every single operational
no. Yeah,
expertise detail into skills. So, for example, exactly what I just said, I'm not an expert at writing cloud code skills. So when I look at the skill, I can't say if it's good or bad. I can only anecdotally experience if the agent is
mm,
non-deterministically using the agent correctly. But Anthropic released agent skill evaluators. They created a skill creator
yeah,
that includes instructions to Cloud on how to
yeah,
evaluate skills. So we're more and more of these expertise
yeah,
um, are trying to be moved into these
yeah.
progressively.
There's definitely some sort of maturity level, right? Like somewhere in the middle, there needs some experience, but then at some point, that experience, that need for that experience, probably drops away, really, and then the loop becomes, as with a mature product, the things can be automated and it will be like a flywheel, it will be a machine, and you'll work on a new machine or something. So it's everything is so bloody nuanced, and the way things fit in is, yeah, I think I need to start writing some things down. Otherwise, I'm not going to capture all this stuff.
You'll get a summary from this podcast to
I don't think
refresh
it'll
your
be good
memory.
enough, until the next model comes along, and then we can do it all over again. Okay,
Yeah,
let's just get through this top row. Let's just chug along. Limited context rule. I think this has been said
covered
before.
it.
I'm not going to go on to that. A distracted agent using one agent for everything.
I do feel sometimes because I create all these issues along the way, I do distract the agent. But for me, the ultimate, like my agent only needs to focus on one thing. If I'm in the spec-driven development, I need to focus on getting the plan and user stories out. I made it
Hmm.
commit and then do the web view. It's like, I don't know if you had this, but a lot of people, at least early on with screens, were like, I need to see the printed out version. I need to print it out, hold the paper in my hand, and then mark it down, put a little underline here.
Well, so I didn't understand. Oh, what do you mean, like the
So for me,
the
right,
really
I have
old-fashioned
the
ways when you print things out in the printer, like at
yeah.
school?
how that relates back to what I just said is that the agent is writing a bunch of markdown. I can go into the code editor and read the markdown, but ultimately what I really want is I want to commit and push it so I can see it in my web dashboard and I can like highlight these things, put a little comment
Mm.
next to it, highlight that thing, put a little comment next to it. And then I go back to my terminal and I say, let's clarify. So the clarify command in SpecLedger pulls all the comments from the web dashboard and then pulls in all of the edge questions that are sprinkled around the document.
Okay. So you streamline that whole prompting process with the.
Yeah. So even though I have a distracted agent, ultimately I have one artifact to review and make sure that that artifact is focused. And then I
Yeah.
can clear the session
Yeah.
and have a new agent look at it. But
Did
it's fact. It's a fact.
there
Distracted agents.
was a new command in Claude called by the way. So like when it's chugging away, you can type by the way.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to use Cloud because of some work commitments. And I used it today and I used voice, which is pretty cool. So you can slash voice and
Uh,
then you can hold spacebar
is
and
this
it
working on the
does.
terminal?
Yep. And
Holy moly.
it even changes the size of your cursor based on the amplification of
Oh
your
my
audio.
God.
It's insane.
So it's funny, like
I was like, what the?
so this distracted agent is an anti-pattern, but then Claude releases this by the way command. So it makes
Uh,
everything.
it's funny when I don't sure how much of the by the way is inside the context, but the way that when I used it is like this. You do slash by the way. So it's doing things and I'm like slash by the way because I'm used to queue up messages. So I'm like, let's queue up messages using by the way. I thought it was work the same thing, but it doesn't. So when you do slash by the way,
It
it
spawns
seems to
an,
suspend the other agent, answer your question, and then wait for you to acknowledge that. And then the moment you press any key, I don't know how, but I started typing. I thought it was going to be like it was in the message log, right?
mhm.
I thought it was in my response reply. So I started typing something, and the by the way disappeared. And when I went to scroll, where is the by the way answer? It wasn't there. So to me, it really seems like this by the way thing allows you to like take some of that context, suspend the agent, answer a question, and it doesn't go into your distracted agent thing.
Okay.
That's how
Oh,
I just felt that
I
it
haven't
was.
actually played with it. So though this
It felt
distracted
weird.
agent is a symptom of
And I think
yeah.
the by the way actually helps you avoid the distracted agent
Mm,
because it suspends the agent, answers your question, and then goes back to the agent. And then if you want to queue up a message based on that answer, you can then put that into
mm.
the context.
Limited focus. I guess I feel like a lot of these things are just describing the same thing in different ways. So this is just like
It's slop, it's AI generated. It's a hallmark of AI generated, where it's describing the same thing in a different way. And this is the hardest thing. It all like makes sense and they all have like a slightly different angle, but they're like 60% the same thing. It's so annoying with AI.
yeah, that's true. It's like a broken mirror. There's like a million ways of seeing the same thing, and it's fragmented. It should just be a
That's
bit
actually a really nice way of looking at it. Um,
a
when I
broken
ask,
mirror.
yeah, because this is my biggest problem. I have a couple of core ideas that I want to get out, and then e- I don't know about lately, but at least a while back when then I have like give me the key points and then it creates them and then but isn't that the same one as the previous point? Yes, there's a slight different angle, but it's almost the same. And then I
Hmm.
say, okay, you know what? I'll solve it when I'm in the slides. So then I generate all the slides from it. And then every slide kind of repeating the same thing but slightly different. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
how do I get like concise to
yeah,
purely identify the exact differences?
yeah.
It's really like a block or mirror.
Yeah. This is where summaries. This is where I guess you need to put your foot down and make a commandment, make a call. Um, this is another thing about yeah. We started off here. Okay, we did the top row. I think that's enough for one session. It was kind of painful because kind of repeated itself. But still, I think this is a good exercise. And what I like what they've done here is that when they've they've vibe coded something so that like I thought they were doing some pretty good linking to each other. And now I can't find the link. Like, yeah, it's like you can see that the black box AI obstacle is related to this. It's caused by this, solved by that.
Sorry. You're gonna have to cut that. But basically, what I wanted to say
What?
was, I mean, the site looks nice, right? But I do feel like it has a lot of repetition. Um,
Yeah,
and that
the
usually
broken
is
mirror.
detrimental to trying to get a point across, is if
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
cannot filter that out.
yeah.
Um, you know what I saw yesterday, I think,
And it's
a
not
post
easy.
on
It's not easy
Terraform.
to distill this, though.
So a point that I saw yesterday, and maybe it's not the same thing, but I saw a post on our Terraform on Reddit, and it was, I've been working for 5 or 6 years as as a infrastructure or DevOps consultant or platform engineer or security, was like security engineer, and I have collected here and published free publicly, and it was like 150 modules for AWS, 200 modules for GCP, 120 modules for Azure, all on one like website. And the website name was horrible, so it's clearly not sales. So maybe it actually is solid, solid Terraform code.
You
But
just
when I
judge it
see
by how
that,
bad the name is.
I see that, I'm like, yeah, okay, there's no way in hell, like maybe 90% of that is pure AI slop. Like, how are you gonna publish, over 400 different Terraform modules
Mm.
and just say, here you go? Like, how can
There's there should
I
be
was even I
there's
didn't
probably
even want to
tools
look at
around
it.
this already, but there should be like a tool to recognize AI slop. You know, you said this here. It's very similar to what you said just there. You know, minus 10 points. You know, like there should be a tool to recognize that something can be summarized or
I'm a
you're
bit
repeating
frustrated with
yourself.
I'm frustrated with Reddit because I'm reading posts, and if they, I guess, if you can keep it short enough for me not to go like, holy shit, wall of text. If it's
Yeah.
like a wall of text, you start reading, and you go like, hold on, how much more is there? And then you keep scrolling for like 5 swipes, and you go like, what the shit? I'm not going to read all of that. Then, okay, that's clear. I'm just going to exit that track. But if it's like short enough, and I then spend time to comment on it, and then maybe I come back to my comment because I'm like, hey, why nobody replied to my comment, or what's going on? And then removed. Hey? And then you look at the comments, AI slop, AI slop, AI slop. Every single
Mm.
time. Now everywhere on social media, people go like, oh, it's all AI slop. Oh, I'm not even gonna read that. And then the moderators usually put the rule like, if you don't spend the time to write it, then we're not gonna spend the time to read it.
So, but the way AI slop is recognized right now is just by human intuition, right? Or
Yeah,
there's
I think they go like, oh, there's an M dash. AI slop. And then, you know
yeah.
what? I had a very funny situation. I used AI I used Cloud, right? But I didn't want Cloud co-author on my commit for reasons. And I told it like, give me the commit message, and then I do the commit. And then, okay, open the GitHub pull request. And when it does a pull request, it doesn't put itself as an author. It, maybe it does sometimes, but it didn't in this case. And I was like, happy. And then the next, like 2 hours later, I go back to the PR and I notice the title as an M dash. I was like, God damn it. I didn't see the M dash.
And now I have to rewrite my history. Ah.
Yeah, no, it was an M dash in the title of the PR. And then if you go and edit the title, of course, everyone can see Vincent changed the title from to. But can you see the actual difference? Because it was changing an M dash to a dash. And I was like, yeah, nobody's gonna nobody's gonna know what I did.
Oh, let's change the topic a little bit to AI to infrastructure type stuff because this is the AI infrastructure podcast. I wanted to mention to you that I tried Swampy Dompy,
Okay. Do you
and
understand it now? Because
I do
that is
pretty much understand it. And as I was
awesome.
evaluating it, I was asking Codex at the time because I've run out of bloody Claude credits. Um, like how did Swamp help? So like Swamp essentially, as I understand it, it grabs the model definitions from AWS,
Yeah, that's what people
and
told me.
like model definitions is like I don't know this what I
The
think we've
JSON
talked about this
schema,
the what?
like the open API or a JSON schema or something around
Yeah, like the
the
JSON schema.
request and
It
response.
grabs down it. Yeah, it grabs down the schema as such from. I mean, I guess they have their own repositories of the models. Um, which are probably derived like the same way you do, well, the way CDK works, but okay, not the same way CDK TF works. But anyway, it grabs it down from AWS, and then you basically talk to the agent, and then Swamp sort of creates this environment so that it's geared up for doing infrastructure work. So you create like um, you say to it like create an EC2 instance, blah blah blah, and then it basically sets up a workflow, and then once you've got that workflow, then you deploy it in a sort of structured, reproducible way. That's the way I understand how it works at the moment.
So
I'm a
instead
little
of
bit,
like infrastructure as code, it creates workflows that to repeat like to um repeatedly
yeah,
or
that's the way to be honest, I haven't repeated this thing. I'm a little bit confused. Like the onboarding is a bit strange because like you do an init and then expects you to go into your chat session with Claude or Codex to do the thing. This is where I thought was a little bit, confusing here. Like it says init, second step, do tell your agent, but it didn't explicitly say, npx Claude or Codex or something. So that was a thing. But the last bit, I was just chatting with Mr. Stack, Mr. Paul Stack, was that I didn't understand how it links up with the AWS CLI. And then I think he's trying to say that you need to just set that
it
up.
just uses the environment.
Yeah,
I guess it uses the AWS CLI credential chain,
yeah.
which is you either have a
So my first
credentials or
taste of Swamp, I think I get what they're doing actually, and it seems to be quite sane. Um, so that's my initial first impressions is good. I'm going to give it a try, a bit
that's
more
good.
time. So yeah, yeah,
Give it a try.
and
I found they got more and more aggressive when people keep asking questions.
yeah, I think
Kind of
I think
like
I think it's
pushed
like
people
I
away
can
from trying it.
understand the deal with Swamp because like I guess it is a bit of a mindset shift to sort of like
But
um
can you explain
to
something
try
to
it
me?
out. Yeah.
Like, why does it need to be a specific workflow and not cannot be just a generic? Like, I don't need a specific front end workflow or a back end workflow, right? I just use cloud. It can write front end code. It can write back end code. It can write infrastructure code. It can write GitHub Actions. Why do I need a separate tool or a CLI or a shell to do something specific?
Well, I think it's consolidating, but anyway, I don't want to say any too much more because I haven't even deployed the resources yet, so I still
That's
haven't
the
really
question
got.
that I have.
Okay,
Because it's the
I
same
will.
question I have to every single company launching an agent shell is like, why do I need your agent shell? And then the most common response I've received is that if you're an expert in AI and you know how to use an agent shell, then you can do everything with one generic shell. But if you're not, then you don't know how to set up your agent shell or how to pull in the skills or how to set up the things. Then you need a specific agent shell. That was the response I've received from StackPack when he says, yes, if you're a power user, you know you don't need this, but most people don't know how to use it. And I don't think that's a good enough answer to me. Like,
Yeah, I don't like things that are not aimed at a power user, that's for sure.
I don't think
The,
he says it's not aimed at the power user. It's more like um, because a power user can still use the tool to good effect. It's just that I don't think the tools should exist.
the one thing that worried me with Swamp was that the every time I ran Swamp on my Raspberry Pi, it took a few seconds to work. So for a power user, that's one thing that's a bit of a smell test, is that things need to be fast, and if they're slow, you need to tell me that you're doing a network request or something, and we're waiting for this network request. But anyway, the other final thing, because I need it for work actually. I need it for work. So CDK question for you, Vincent. I might have asked you this before, but I'm just going to ask you again. Big CDK landscape at work. We've created constructs. The idea of the constructs is that we have repeatable patterns within a governance ADR signed off
They've been
approved
copied and they
things.
differ. Diverged. They've been
No,
copied
no,
and they've diverged.
what do you mean? The patterns diverged? What do you mean?
No,
Is that what?
you mentioned last time you have like reusable construct, but they've been copied around and they have slightly diverged, and you're trying to realign
Well,
them.
yeah, we're trying to realign them. The problem is that when you deploy a stack, is that the right term? Or an app? I'm always
Yes, it's a
confused.
CloudFormation stack.
When
An app has
oh,
multiple stacks.
okay, yeah, exactly. When you deploy an app, multiple stacks, we need to prove that 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 those constructs were used in that stack.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it
AWS
can't
CDK
be a
has that.
simple like bill of materials coming out of CloudFormation because that doesn't make sense. We need to say that this um, Acme construct for buckets was used. Acme construct for DynamoDB was used. Acme construct for I don't know certain support role was used. When I was chatting about it to AWS Docs MCP, essentially it suggested just tagging the constructs and then deriving the tags from the deployment, which seemed a bit lame, but seemed fine at the same time. I was just
Yeah, I've
wondering.
heard that before. Like basically you track which module version of in Terraform has been used by looking at the resources tag. Like they identify
Yeah,
I've been deployed by
I
this
feel
module
like
version.
I guess it's probably just good enough to rely on tags. I just thought there might be. I mean, initially I was going down this rabbit hole where when you deploy on CDK, you get the CDK metadata field that's put in by
Normally you would do this through aspects. And you can have like a whole bunch of compliance aspects. So what they do aspects is
aspects. Is that an
yeah,
AWS thing?
it's yeah, they ported it over to CDKTF as well. So what it does is they are invoked, they are attached to nodes within the tree, and they're invoked um, during synthesis when constructs have been generated, and they are then visiting the nodes, and then some functional code gets executed. So aspects can be used to validate things. Um, if you were to, like, for example, there's one aspect in the AWS CDK library that validates, you can activate it to ensure that IMDS v2 is used, the information metadata service,
Hmm.
where you have V1 did not require a token, but V2 requires a token, and it's a security compliance thing usually that you want your AWS
Okay, this
EC2
is the first
instance
time I'm
to
hearing about
require.
it. Thanks for the tip. I'm gonna have to explore that.
Yeah, aspects are very powerful. They can be used
I
to
kind of
tag your
assumed that
infrastructure
that
as
sort of
well.
thing would be an SCP, but one problem at work is that we don't even know who controls the organization. Like there's an organizational breakdown where the people who admin the organization we don't even know who they are. So rolling out SCP, sorry, is um
Okay.
is
No,
always
no.
like
So
very
aspects
tr confusing.
are, yeah, so aspects are a way to programmatically, and you, yeah, aspects are a way to programmatically validate certain and ensure that resources are created in the construct tree, or validate the configuration of a resource in the construct tree. So you can do a lot of things like, is this resource of this type? And if that's the case, does this particular configuration field match this particular value? So that's why when Anton Babenko started talking about compliance.tf, introducing a whole bunch of compliancy around Terraform modules,
Mm,
I was like, that would be so easy to do on top of CDKTF, because you just
mm.
create aspects. You just create an aspect and you just run them across your construct tree, and you validate that the resources are configured
That
correctly.
that sounds like quite a cool thing. I mean, I'm just looking at the page right here. That sounds like because in Terraform you would have to do some weird. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of the like OPA.
Terraform
You'd need like
linting,
some sort of weird
OPA, yeah.
policy, which
So
is
there's
so ugly,
several
isn't
ways
it?
to do it in Terraform. You can do OPA or Sentinel. From Sentinel is the HashiCorp way. That's only in HashiCorp Cloud. If you
Yeah.
want to do the open source one, then you use Open Policy Agent, which is basically like a rule-based matching engine, like Prolog. and you basically define your rules, and it works across Kubernetes for Kubernetes admission um, hooks, but it also works across Terraform plan files or
Mm.
JSON. You can apply it across JSON. So then it understands the concept of like a plan and what's the before and after of a resource, and then it can validate that the after still is
Yeah. I find
is
like you
correct.
have to be a super mature shop to start using OPA.
We
Um,
used it. We use it. So we use it for tag compliance. So we have a couple of rules that identify which are the allowed tag, like required tag keys. So if a resource is going to be created or modified, the after snapshot has to have these tags, these particular keys, and then per key, which are the valid values. So if you use if you make a typo in your if you in your value, it will highlight it. It says that's not a valid, using value list, like this reference key, it's called a
right, right,
reference
right,
list,
right,
right?
right,
You have
right,
this
right.
key has this value list.
Yeah, I can.
So we use OPA for that because it helps with like incident escalations, cost
Yeah, I think
attribution.
I've seen as much before. Okay, sorry, I need to take my kids to school. We're out of time. We're out of time.
Yeah, so you can do tags, and you can do
Well,
OPA.
if you can think of anything else, just let me know. I need that's the thing I need to do today. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the whole bill of material thing. Like, I don't feel that's done enough in our industry to say like these and these and these things are deployed. But
Yeah, I was
but
gonna
the
say with
trouble is there's so
AWS,
many, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You need
I
a
was gonna say
construct.
with AWS CDK that lives in your Python requirements.txt or in your package.json, right? Which are the constructs that you depend on. But it doesn't really mean that they're being the ones invoked into the code and
Exactly,
and
exactly,
synthesized,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. So
Uh,
like I'll get into it in
okay,
another time. Okay.
awesome.
Thanks. See you, Vincent.
Yeah.
Cheers.